The U.S. men's national team November roster will be dropped any day now, and I would imagine it'll probably look similar to the September and October rosters under the new regime of Mauricio Pochettino. But there is one big difference about these games that we didn't see in September, October. These games matter. These are competitive games in the Nations League. And while the Nations League is not the Gold Cup or the Copa America or the World Cup, you do not want to deprive yourself by losing to Jamaica. These are games that will occur on Thursday, November the 14th, down in Kingston Town, which is going to be a shock to the system to Mauricio Pochettino for sure. And then Monday, November the 18th in Energizer Park, formerly City Park in St. Louis. You've got to get by there so that you can make the semifinals next March at incredible SoFi Stadium, in all likelihood against Canada and Mexico. You don't want to miss that party. Not to mention you're the two-time reigning champions of the Nations League, so you want to defend that trophy, and it'll be fun in Los Angeles, which is my hometown. I would like to go to these games for the U.S. But there is some alarm bells out there for the United States, and we are going to talk about the goalkeeper situation because this is as dire as it's ever been in my lifetime. I can't speak about the 50s and 60s, but I can't imagine. I'll just leave it as is. As long as I've been covering the sport, I've never seen the goalkeeping situation as dire as this. There was a time where you could arguably say we were developing the best goalkeepers in the world. We were one of the best countries at it. So today on the Soccer OG, you get a chance. We've been a little dark on the podcast, but we'll get back into it here in the weeks ahead. We've got some great ideas for that. So check out the Soccer OG podcast. Like and subscribe us here. Hit that like button, smash it. We will be here for this. We'll be here for the November games. We'll preview and recap everything there in those games against Jamaica. The goalkeeping situation. But yes, there was a time where we had Brad Friedel in the Premier League, Casey Keller in the Premier League and the Bundesliga and in La Liga, Tim Howard in the Premier League, Brad Guzan in the Premier League. People forget that Brad Guzan played 200 games for Aston Villa, was in the English football for a decade. Tony Meola, who's another one of the highest standard. We were producing incredible keepers. We took it for granted that this would be a pipeline that would continue, and we would see them come down and go, it is good. Well, it is not good now, and I will document it, and we will figure out a short-term solution and what we can look for long-term. As it applies to these November games, the October call-ups were Matt Turner, Patrick Schulte, who both have started games recently, Ethan Horvath, and Zach Steffen, who was sent home because he wasn't 100%. Will they bring in those same four keepers? I don't think they'll bring in four. They'll bring in three. And my guess is Turner and Schulte for sure. Probably Horvath. Clearly, Mauricio Pochettino has been consulted by people at U.S. Soccer, and he's bringing in those keepers that have come before. But now he's had a couple months on the job, and he is scouting guys, so maybe he sees something a little different. Keep in mind, Mauricio Pochettino always likes younger players, and I don't know how that's going to affect this next roster. But my guess, it will be Matt Turner, it will be Patrick Schulte, and we'll see who is the third. You've invested so much in Matt Turner and Patrick Schulte. But let's talk about Matt Turner, our number one. Backup at Crystal Palace. Played in an EFL Cup game. Did not look good. He may start 2 or 3 more games for Crystal Palace from here until March or what have you. He needs to come probably to MLS and start playing regularly. And remember, Mauricio Pochettino talked about the need for players to be playing regularly. And I felt that was specifically directed at Matt Turner. But then he starts both games in the October window, including that mess down in Mexico. Matt Turner's not starting, but this is not just him. It is absolutely stunning. Our 6 best keepers in Europe, the guys that are playing overseas, are all backups. None of them are starting for their team. Matt Turner's the backup at Crystal Palace. Ethan Horvath was starting at Cardiff City. He is now the backup for that team in the EFL Championship. Gaga Slonina, the heir apparent to American soccer, the big physical specimen we thought. He was on the books at Chelsea. He is owned by Chelsea. He was on loan at Barnsley, also in the EFL Championship. Barnsley's playing pretty well. He is now the backup there. It's pretty rough, man. Diego Cochen, the 18-year-old, Diego Cochen, the 18-year-old, I'm sorry, we're messing up his name, at Barcelona. He is the backup. He starts for Barcelona B. He is not like the other ones. He is a legit prospect. He also could play for Peru or Venezuela, but seeing how dire the situation is at the United States and that they're hosting the World Cup and he's already been called into a camp, young Diego would be crazy not to play for the U.S. But they're not going to put an 18-year-old into this team right now, between now and the World Cup in 2026. It's just not going to happen, even though he might have the best credentials. But he's also a backup. But he's 18 and a backup. But Turner, Slonina, Horvath, it's... Matt Turner just had a bad deal. I think he had a move elsewhere to play, and Nottingham Forest made a mess of it, and then he went to Crystal Palace, and now he's been screwed. Matt Turner is still a pretty good goalkeeper, and he's probably our number one choice, and he will probably start the November games. But this is a mess. The other two, we expected to get there and play and start for EFL Championship teams, and they're not. This is the EFL Championship. I mean, there was 3 goalkeepers starting. It was 4 goalkeepers at one time starting in the Premier League that were American. What is going on? So that's a big problem. So then you look at MLS. And I mentioned Zach Steffen, and there's a well-documented play in the MLS Cup playoffs with the Colorado Rapids, who just went south really quick, where he smacks it off of Ricky Poch. It goes in the net. Not good for Zach Steffen. The injuries are not good. So I got to cool off on him as an option, at least to start. He might make a roster, but his stock is going down. But so is everybody's. Some good options, young keepers outside of Patrick Schulte, who we mentioned, who was called it. Patrick Schulte seems like the guy who could get it, but he's got knocked out of the playoffs by Columbus. He lost in the penalty shootout. He hasn't looked firm either. He's looked shaky, and remember, this is a guy with no pedigree. He rocketed up with Columbus from Columbus Crew 2 because of the eye of the coach Wilfred Nancy, and rocketed to the national team level. But is he that good? I'd like to think he is, but I have some doubts. Other young players, Roman Celentano at FC Cincinnati, solid. Drake Callender, we've seen him called up a couple times, pretty solid guy. Matt Freese, I like Matt Freese a lot in New York City FC. These are guys in their mid-20s or late 20s, but you don't incorporate them now. It's too late for November for these games. Are those guys, there's a pecking order, and those guys would be, those 3 names would be 7, 8, 9, 10 in that pecking order. But I got to think of something. There are some goalkeepers performing well in MLS who could be an option. And I wonder if Mauricio Pochettino would kick the tire on this. Brad Guzan had a 13-save performance for Atlanta United against Inter Miami. He looked phenomenal. Brad Guzan's 40 years old. His prime is way behind him. But maybe a short-term solution here until someone can really blossom. And I will say this. I know Mauricio Pochettino doesn't play older players. But having an elder statesman, for lack of a better expression, in one of these camps, to me, doesn't sound like the worst idea, just to be somebody who knows, how to get from point A to point B, because we have seen this younger U.S. team not quite look comfortable on the national team. They have stripped away the identity of an experienced group, and that's fine, but sometimes that works. We've talked about the need of leadership, and that's why Tim Ream is there, and it is kind of an apples situation. Tim Ream was brought in to shore up the central defense because we weren't good enough to get us through a World Cup. And it worked out pretty well. So maybe we do that with the Brad Guzan or Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry, 2 penalty shootout wins for Seattle. He's 37, 38. Hasn't really broken into the national team, so I would think if there was a elder statesman to kind of come into the national team, it would be Guzan over Fry. And now if Atlanta United could pull off the upset on Inter Miami and Guzan does it, bring him in November. Bring him in December, January, February, March, and then hopefully by then we have someone that could lock it in. We could bring in Poch or some of these other younger guys to get them a run here, but these are competitive games. And this is the World Cup cycle. We don't fast track these guys, even though they're talented. You need experience. The USA is lacking experience. And I want to make this abundantly clear. This is an emergency situation. None of these options are that great. None of them are that great. I would love to see Tim Howard in his prime role in there, or Casey Keller, or Brad Friedel. And we wouldn't have to worry about the goalkeeper, but we do. So if you're sitting there going, Brad Guzan, are you crazy? Give me another option. Give me another option. They're not good, or they're not ready. I'm not going to sit here and have this debate about MLS, because we have guys, I would rather have a guy starting in MLS than being a backup in the EFL Championship. We have seen enough of Ethan Horvath. We don't know about Gaga Slonina. He's going backwards. Matt Turner's going backwards. It's a situation that we need a good goalkeeper. We need the best possible situation. And if it's an experienced keeper, I'm at this. I would have never suggested this. I would have not have done this video 2 weeks ago. But seeing what's happening on the club level, I am willing to hear things, hear ideas, and why not go? I think Brad Guzan might be a gift. He doesn't have to start, but maybe he does. Matt Turner, we'll find out who gets called in. I think you can lock in Turner and Schulte, but none of these guys should be locked in. None of them are doing anything exemplary. They should all feel nervous about not getting that phone call from Mauricio Pochettino. Should be up for grabs. Pochettino should be interviewing these guys and seeing if they have that eye of the tiger. And see if Brad Guzan goes, let me get with these kids, I can get them straight. So let's leave that door open. Again, don't shoot the messenger. The situation is dire, and we're looking for some options. And bring Coach in too, because he is a guy that we need to groom. It was Slonina, but the ship is starting to sail for him. We need a young keeper, and we need a guy we can rely on now. So I would say Turner, Guzan, Cochin. I'm still nervous, but I'm just throwing it out there. What do you think? Drop a comment. What do you think we should do with the goalkeeper situation? I'm willing to hear any idea. I know mine aren't the best. I'm just worried about what I'm seeing on the club level. The Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Like and subscribe is here. Hit that like button. We'll be back probably in a day or two to talk about the roster, and we'll talk about more goalkeepers and defenders. Tyler Adams is back. That's good. Accentuate the positive.